mute it, right, Christina?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'll go back inside.
Okay,
Yeah.
ready? Welcome to the November 20th meeting of the Facilities Committee. I call this meeting to order. Mrs. Helms is on the phone. I need a motion to approve the agenda, but we need to make two changes. We need to delete 3A, which is the Rocky River Elementary Stormwater Easement. That's not ready yet. And we need, under open session actions, we're going to add 2C, Interlocal Agreement. What did I say? 2C, I said. Delete 3A, which was the Rocky River. Yeah. So the original agenda that went out to the public is what I'm talking about. Sorry. But it updates in board docs, so you don't see the original. But the original had a 3A for the Rocky River storm water easement. That's going to be deleted. And then we're going to add 2C, which is the interlocal agreement for the Cuthbertson Land Library. Okay? So I need an emotion to approve the amended agenda.
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the stadium lighting bids for Piedmont High School and Walter Bickett Education Center.
You'll recall that this item was approved on the CIP this past spring. Piedmont High School, Walter Bickett lighting. The bids, actually, it was through the U.S. Communities Purchasing Cooperative. The cost to upgrade Piedmont High School lighting is $239,000. That's plus a $5,500 extended warranty that takes it for a 25-year warranty. Same warranty for the Walter Bickett stadium lighting. That price is $245,000. Again, plus $5,500. That totals $495,000. That's within our budget of $510,000. FYI, if we do get the this PO by December 31st, we'll have a $15,000 reduction on that. We're retrofitting these lights with LED, and the standard design standard was 50-foot candles average.
So we did the same thing at Parkwood, right?
Correct.
This is the same thing we did at Parkwood High. Okay, retrofitted the existing poles.
Is this the same company we used at Parkwood also?
Yes.
Okay. And at Piedmont, there's only 2 poles on each side. I guess is that adequate?
It's 4 poles total.
So, 2 and
so they were able to achieve an average of 50-foot candles.
Okay.
And the staff recommends the Facilities Committee to recommend the Board of Education to approve the contracting with Musco Sports Lighting in the amount of $480,000.
Mrs. Helms had asked a question earlier that if this is Walter Bickett is where Cata plays at the Ed Center. If we were to do something in the future, build a new stadium for them or whatever, that these lights could be moved to whatever we do in the future if that were to happen.
And the warranty would go with it.
And the warranty would go with it, which is a great question. Yeah.
We just pay labor to take them down.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So
I'll make a motion to recommend to the full board the stadium lighting upgrade bid.
Okay. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is the Shiloh Valley Primary and Elementary School capacities that needed to be changed after we changed the grade configuration.
Yes. So Cropper GIS had determined the enrollments for the whole school system. Like you mentioned, this grade configuration change, which changed the capacity. Specifically, K through 3 grades have fewer numbers of children per class. And so now at Shiloh Valley Primary, it's nothing but K through 2. So obviously that capacity is going to change and it's going to reduce. Vice versa, the elementary school is going to increase in enrollment. Staff has calculated the capacities using basically the Cropper GIS methodology. And so we're requesting the Facilities Committee recommend to the Board of Education to approve updating the capacities of Shiloh Valley Primary to 641 students and Charlie Valley Elementary to 844 students to reflect the recent grade configuration changes.
So you know that the new capacities of both schools together is 1485, and the prior capacity for both schools was 1494. So we'd be down 9, but that's because of the K through 2 configuration. And Dave and I had a conversation about some of the stuff that Cropper did a couple of years ago when he came up with his methodology for the capacities, one of which is dual language, and he limited the number of dual language not limited. He put a capacity for dual language classrooms at 19, and that's kind of low for what we're doing in the dual language program. But we decided to go with what Cropper did, so it's the same across the board. So if everybody's okay with that, I need a motion to send it to recommend to the full board updating the capacities of Shiloh Primary and Shiloh Elementary.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the interlocal agreement for the library on Cuthbertson land.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In your materials, and I'm sorry that when it converts to a PDF, you don't get the comments, et cetera, on there. We've received a revised interlocal agreement from the county for the transfer of a portion of the land at Cuthbertson for the construction of a library. And I know that there's interest in moving this forward, and so I wanted to bring it to you all now so that there could be consideration as to whether you wanted to consider this by the full board.
Can we kind of
December
take it
meeting.
page by page?
Sure.
So they are going to split off the land, the 16 acres as their own parcel, and they'll have a deed for that.
Yes.
And we can restrict the deed if we want.
Yes, and I would
Okay.
recommend that we talk about some deed restrictions with the county.
Okay. In the third whereas clause, the purchase and lease in part from school bond proceeds. We looked at this before we did the motion back in August. They did pay at their November 2006 meeting. Their minutes indicated that they did pay for the land with proceeds from bonds. So
Yes, I'm in the comments that I'll send back to the council for the county is I do want some clarification on the language that it was purchased at least in part from school bond
Yeah.
proceeds to see what other funds are they referring to as the in part, because it does appear that it was purchased with bond funds.
okay. I don't have anything on page 2. I go to page 3. 4.2. So long as the opening day shall be no more than 4 years. So we had asked in our motion back in August for 3, they had to open within 3. So now we're at 4.
Well,
So they have to go ahead, explain that to me.
Well, that's what we're going to propose to you all. They've revised it to say, initially the revision was 5 years. And so we went back and forth and they have agreed to beginning construction within 3 years. Mr. Strickland helped me craft language that talked about including the award of a contract, because I guess that kind of gets them in line where they have to keep moving from that point forward.
Okay.
And then because there was no end date and it was the continued diligently with construction thereafter until it's open. And so we did think that there needed to be some end date to that diligent work. And that was the recommendation after when Mr. Strickland and I talked was 4 years would
Okay.
give them time to complete that.
So-
And it was a compromise between the 3 years and the 5 years that they.
So when the bid is accepted, that's when we're considering the start of construction? Yes.
When the
Yes.
contract is awarded. it's
Awarded,
3
yeah.
years,
Yes. Okay, in that sentence, it says, however, if such library construction does not commence within the 3 years and be completed within the 4 years required due to any cause beyond the reasonable control of the county. What is that? What's reasonable?
Yeah, they did talk about acts of God, military and civil authorities, floods and the kind of things that they wouldn't be able to, that they had no control over, kind of the acts of God and those is all I can imagine.
Okay.
Now, is that language limited to those?
No, it's not.
It's not.
Okay.
We had struck some of the language, but in
Right.
a compromise, they did take some of it out. It was much broader initially.
Okay. And the paragraph about the sidewalks, 2
Mhm.
years is way too long. I
Okay.
mean, if it's joint use, we need a sidewalk that connects the schools to the library.
I don't disagree. In conversations with them, they had not initially budgeted that item. They are planning to try and include it in their budget. I think they are going through some of the same things that we've gone through on recent projects with costs being inflated. So we do think we do need to have it in. We're working, before it comes up, I'll say that we are working with the cross-country teams at both the high school and the middle school. We've resolved one of the issues with the current trail that goes up and turns around. We've worked through that. And so the school is now figuring out where they can add back a certain length to make the cross-country trail the correct distance.
And that's required for them to.
Correct. And they have indicated that they would make us whole, and that's what we're looking
Okay.
for.
I think 2 years is a long time. How about a year for a sidewalk?
We can certainly ask for that.
Again, joint use.
Right.
I can make that revision.
I mean, this is up to everybody. I'm just throwing out my
Mhm.
statements. Okay, page 5 is probably my biggest issue. In the reversion event, meaning that it burns down, it's not open anymore, they can convey the property back to us, or they can pay fair market value of the land. Is that at the time or what? And then here's the issue, as I see it. It sits next to our schools. It sits at the ingress and egress is on our service road or whatever you want to call it. It can't be just anything. So if it reverts back to them, if they pay, there has to be some sort of deed restriction about what can go there. And I know that it's only 16 acres and that's only so big, but we really have to watch out for what can go in there, given that our schools are there.
Yeah, and that goes back to kind of what we discussed earlier, is that I think that absolutely we need to have those discussions about deed restrictions.
Okay. Or 2 goes away, and the only reversion event is it goes back to the school system.
Right.
And then in that event, what happens to the structure that's on the site?
Who's responsible?
Who's responsible
Well,
for
that would be
demolition
ours.
or whatever?
On what?
For demolition if we
Right.
need to.
We would not want to be left with a
Then-
half-constructed building or, yeah.
Okay, so then deed restrictions would have to come into play.
Well, I guess, Michelle, if you put in language in on the page 1, as Ms. Heintel pointed out about deed restrictions, would that cover
She and I
this?
have talked about this a
Yeah,
bunch.
yeah, and
she
then
knows
there
that.
is a comment that shows up on my version that says we need to discuss deed
Okay.
restrictions.
Yep.
And I apologize, the PDF somehow,
No, I mean,
Deletes all of
we've talked about this since
Yeah.
the beginning. Yeah. Those were all my comments. I mean, this is great. It gives us joint use. We can use it for things, but we have to protect it in case it's not used as a library any longer. That's just my thoughts.
So, Michelle, what action are you looking for?
And I guess in our motion, just our motion from August, we say that. We say that it provides for a reversion of the property should the library not be fully constructed within 36 months, which is now 48 months, or in the event that the facility is destroyed or is not used for a library.
right?
So we always contemplated that we would have some, that we would get it back, but if we can lock it down with deed restrictions, I'm good with that.
The next step would be for this to be reviewed by the full board and a determination of whether we wanted to send these proposed revisions back to the county.
And are you okay with the indemnification section?
Yes, okay, as I can.
Okay, yeah, I know that's the sticking point with most attorneys anyway. But, yeah.
I guess my question was going back to Michelle, do you need to continue to work with the county on these? If the committee today approves these recommendations and the changes, do we need to then work with the county before it goes to the full board?
I can send this version back if the committee feels like this is a good, with the discussions we've had today, if the committee feels like this is a good next step, and then see,
What the
You know,
full
Yeah,
board says.
see what the full board says at, once they respond, whether they,
So you would, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
No,
So you would want this to come to the full board pending the discussion with the county?
Correct.
Okay.
So indemnification, but you do feel that it does cover us.
it does.
Okay. I know, we could always tweak it a little bit, yes. What?
You can go forever.
Yes, I know. Okay, so we need a motion to send this to the full board with our discussion changes
And I guess, and continuing negotiations with the
and
county.
continuing, yes.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Next up is informational, Mr. Ogram, Porter Ridge Cluster Attendance Zone.
Good morning. Welcome back to the next installment of our development tour through the county. This month, we'll be looking at the Porter Ridge cluster. And the board had expressed an interest in some sort of heat map with regard to student attendance. This isn't exactly a heat map. However, it does, I didn't do that. Anyway, so these are the K-12 students within the Porter Ridge attendance area. And you can see how they cluster around some of the major subdivisions. Our current status at these 7 schools, you'll see the middle school and high school at the bottom at 91 and 94% respectively. And the 5 elementary schools. The one elementary school that seems quite high is Sardis Elementary, and I will address that separately when we get to that part of the presentation. And there's also the number of mobile classrooms at each school.
And Porter Ridge is only partially in the Porter Ridge.
That's correct. Porter Ridge is a split feeder. This is what is on this chart is the total enrollment and total capacity. However, Porter Ridge does get a contribution from a section that's within the Piedmont cluster.
Okay.
This, another map of the Porter Ridge cluster, again, as in previous presentations, shows the active and subdivisions in planning. A difference here, there is an apartment complex. It's very small. And also there is some DOT property, which is the bypass corridor. The one thing I would point out about this is Dr. McKibben in his most recent report for the district had talked about the strong possibility of increased development around the bypass corridor. And it's pretty easy to see where the purple and the blue are tend to be around that bypass corridor as he predicted. Because there are 5 feeder schools, I decided to break the cluster in half and address each half separately. The northern half for Stallings and Hemby Bridge Elementaries is shown here. You'll see Stallings has quite a bit of planned development currently somewhere in the process. I've been in communication with the principal of the school, and she's aware of what is going on. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that. And just because it's in planning does not mean it's necessarily approved. So it's not a done deal. The other thing I would point out at the very northern edge, the courtyards at Lawyers Road is a 55 plus designated community.
Is it restricted or is it?
I can't answer that. I know it's designated as.
I think it's just.
This is the development in the Stallings and Hemby Bridge areas. All the purple you can see are the planned development, and the one active subdivision in the Hemby Bridge area is Brayburn, which we addressed, I think 2 months ago with a line adjustment.
Lines, yeah.
One thing that I find interesting here is I broke out the apartments and townhomes from the typical single family units, and we're seeing a very much increased interest in apartments and townhomes in this area. Something for us to definitely keep an eye on. It's not a surprise being as close as it is to the Charlotte Beltway, but we're watching. Yes, ma'am.
From my own personal feeling and watching it, some of the municipalities say that we don't have, that students don't live in apartments, and that is not true. We've seen it happen over and over again. And I think the one that's by Lake Park is like 91 kids at that last time we looked at it. So there are children who are living in the apartments and townhomes and everything. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. And we do have a couple of apartment complexes in the area that I don't have the figures in front of me, but we know how many children come from those apartment complexes, and they're completed complexes, so that we can track that. But you're absolutely right. The apartments do contribute children. The southern half of the attendance areas, Porter Ridge, Poplar, and Sardis. I've grayed out the area of Porter Ridge that's in the Piedmont cluster. So all we're seeing is that portion that's in the Porter Ridge cluster. What I will point out about Sardis, I mentioned on the second slide that it was at 97% capacity. There's only one subdivision in Sardis that has any degree of activity, and that is Crooked Creek Estates, which is almost built out. So I do not see any impact coming from that. And as you can see from the map, there are no planned subdivisions currently in that attendance area. Poplar, on the other hand, is seeing a huge amount of interest. And here is the development spreadsheet. The Poplar Road property, 3 from the bottom, is you'll see it's a 418 apartments and townhomes. The status was that it was initially rejected. To my knowledge, there is no current planning on that property. However, given the location of the property, which is at Poplar Road and the bypass in that general area, there will be future interest on it. So I'm keeping it on my radar to track, even though we don't have any specific or definite planning related to that. I mentioned Crooked Creek Estates in Sardis. You can see as of this summer that there are only 12 unoccupied homes, and I think that number has gone down. There's fewer than 12 now. The big subdivision, obviously, Bonterra, they continue to build, have been building for years. And Porter Ridge is also seeing a lot of action at Stratford and Poplar Grove. Stratford being on Ridge Road and Poplar Grove on Unionville Indian Trail Road. They are very much in the process of building homes.
So if you add your two slides together on the to be built, so 2199 on that slide, and then 3220 on the next slide. So that's
About
5,300.
5,400 essentially. Yes, ma'am.
So while we're looking at elementary, that's spread out between 4.5, let's say, elementary schools, the middle and high school, though, will be impacted by that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it is definitely something we are following very closely. We just did some bond work at both the middle school and the high school. But absolutely, we want to keep an eye on that. And the final slide are the current cohorts within the Porter Ridge cluster. I thought this was interesting because this does not follow the same shape as the cohorts system-wide follow, or the cohorts that we saw when we looked at Cuthbertson last month. However, you'll also notice the difference between the biggest cohort and the smallest cohort is just over 100. So we're not talking huge numbers, but from a demographic standpoint, it is definitely interesting, and we're going to be very interested to see what Dr. McKibben has to say about that if and when he comes back.
We're waiting for the 2020 census, right?
That's
For him
right.
to come back.
Yes, ma'am. And that concludes the slides. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
So I guess the question is the same question that I always ask is, do we need to do anything about this, or is it just something you need to continue to monitor, and how fast it's going up and what the build out is on these subdivisions?
I believe it's something we continue to monitor. The one school that appears to be close to its limit, as I said, really has virtually no.
Sardis.
Right.
Okay.
The other schools have a little bit of cushion. We do not have build out rates. Stallings has several large apartment complexes planned, and they have not started yet. They have not started any building. It's going to take them a while to do that. So it's going to be several years before we see an impact from that sort of thing.
Okay.
If we are saying we're waiting on the 2020 census to potentially bring them back to freshen this up or give us an update, shouldn't we go ahead and initiate some conversations with them now? Because if we're waiting on it, others may be waiting on the census as well. So we'd rather be at the head of the pack than the
Yeah,
end.
the census is 2 years away. So
Right, but we ought to have those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yes, sir. Dr. Strickland, or Mr. Strickland, I apologize. I have had conversations with Dr. McKibben. He has penciled this in on his calendar, even though we have not actually formalized any commitment yet.
Because there would be no purpose to getting anything now, because his last update to us was based on the 2010 census, and it wouldn't be any different from that.
And the Census Bureau updates annually. However, the big data gathering is next year.
Okay.
And it just makes sense for us to wait for that data to be gathered and collated somewhat and then analyzed.
I'm glad you're looking at it. I just want to make sure that we're being proactive on whatever we can. And right now, we don't have anything to be proactive on, but if it gets to that point, we need to have a discussion about it.
And I agree totally. Because this cohort shape is different than what we've seen elsewhere in the county. We're paying special attention to this.
I would say too that Dr. McKibben always told us that his one concern would be Porter Ridge because of where it sits, and then adding in the bypass to it would.
Between the bypass and the Beltway.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
absolutely.
I appreciate it. So what's your next one? What's your next cluster?
At the will of the board.
I think we should look at Sun Valley at some point. Because Indian Trail and Stallings are adding stuff to.
They're in a
Sun
similar
Valley.
situation with
Yeah.
their proximity to the county line.
And India Trail's approved a bunch of apartments too, at the Hub and a couple other places. So.
And Stallings has approved one right on the county line.
Right.
On, Matthews Weddington.
And they're talking about, Indian Trail's talking about another apartment complex between Old Monroe and 74 off of Wesley Chapel Road too. So behind the Lowe's there.
Right.
So,
Right.
unless anybody else has
On which side of the track?
on Sun
Lowe's.
Valley. So the buses don't cross 74.
Well, you get the railroad track in between Old Monroe and
It's
Lowe's. is
It's on the
the-
east side of the railroad tracks,
Yes.
on the north side of Wesley Chapel Road.
So unless anybody else has, Sun Valley would be great to take a look
Sure.
at.
Absolutely. Sun Valley would be
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you very much. This is good information.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. And does this, just for, this is on the thing, so the board can look at it. I guess I was thinking about whether or not it should go to the board, but it's good. Okay. Next up, construction update.
Okay, I'll be brief. The transportation center, that project is it's close to 39% complete. I did provide some kind of breakout percentages, completion percentages for some of the major trades.
Okay.
The project is
That's
running
good.
smooth, and not much has changed since the last meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's kind of the same trades are involved and
So
the
they're on-
same milestones.
They're on track to hook up the water and sewer and everything in mid-December, end of December.
As far as electrical, that's one that we are looking forward to. The city
Okay.
is working on that, bringing it to the site. Our contractor it's in his scope of work to extend water and sewer, to the city of Monroe services. So that effort is getting started as
Okay.
well.
Sun
And
Valley.
Sun Valley High School, I did focus more on the building as far as G&H, which is the dining, kitchen, admin, and CTE CTE classrooms. Overall, the project is about 50% complete. And again, provided some of the major subcontractor percentages. If we did have a tour of the school for the high school principals meeting.
How did they like it?
I think they liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very cold and, muddy,
Yes.
day and site. But it was good. They could see, it was close to the point where they could actually see what was going to be happening, what spaces were going to be. But it was defined as far as the spaces were concerned.
So stadium is hopefully going to be done by the mid-February so that the lacrosse team can get out on it.
That's certainly the expectation.
Okay.
I
know, weather, rain.
as far as the major components, roofing, appears to be complete. Masonry appears to be complete. The field, there's just a section of the end zone, one of the end zones that we'll see how that stabilizes as far as the grass, over the winter, and come the spring. Certainly next spring, next summer, that should be in much better shape.
Okay.
Is that Bermuda grass on the
It
field?
is.
Okay. Did we overseed it this year?
We haven't overseeded it.
Okay.
It's just the Bermuda sod.
Okay. What about tennis courts?
Tennis courts have been graded. The contractor is the tennis courts are behind some of the sidewalk work, that needs to occur. So sidewalk work is the priority. And coming behind that, tennis courts, it's ready. It's been proof rolled. It's ready, to
Okay.
receive the stone base. But, again, priority was the
State.
concrete,
Yep.
concrete.
Okay. Porter Ridge, those are done, right? Oh,
For
no, you said
for the most
partition.
part, yeah, we just have a little bit of scope that we had wanted to add. And then on the capital project side, really not too much point to go into much detail
So
other than video
Just so
doorbells.
transportation's still going on, Sun Valley's still going on. Porter Ridge High School just has that little partition wall you're waiting for. Piedmont's done, Monroe's done, Western Union's just getting the HVAC thing from our
That's right.
perspective. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's good. And people should watch the bond update video. It's very good.
It is out there.
It's a great
yes.
video. It really is.
Thanks for plugging that.
Yeah. Okay, capital projects, sorry.
Really, the one I would mention there is the video doorbells, which we certainly want to get moving, and that has.
So it has not started yet.
There, from the schedule that I looked at yesterday, 4 schools should have been started.
Okay, awesome. Just a quick question. Canopy at Parkwood High, are they done now? Or you didn't want me to ask that?
So the answer is no.
Okay.
They look done to me.
So there are canopies up,
Okay,
but the project is not complete. So
okay,
there's still work that has to be done.
okay. So can I go out and see it?
Sure.
Does it look, okay, enough to go out and see it? It looks,
Yeah, it'd be better on a dry day, but yes. We are working on the site.
Okay,
So the
thank
site
you.
has some issues.
okay, oh, good.
But we
that-
have canopies on wet day.
I'm sorry.
But we have canopies.
For wet days.
Yeah, yeah.
We do have canopies. The drainage system is something that needs to continue on.
Oh, good. The courts at Parkwood High have been demolished and the landscaping's underway. That's good too. HVAC at Wolf. So when do we think that'll be done?
Actually, next month, I wanted to feature that
Oh, good.
and get
Okay.
more
So we won't talk
information on that.
Okay, stadium lighting we already talked about, video doors. Okay, great. Anybody have any questions on the construction update? We're good. Next, change order update is just for our information. Does anyone have any questions? Okay,
What is a siren detector?
So the gates are going to be closed nighttime, weekends. Fire truck pulls up to the gate, has the siren on, the gate will open for it. It's kind of cool.
that's very cool. Okay, that is everything in open session. So I need a motion to go into closed session to discuss land acquisition pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A5.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thanks, Christina. Okay.